boys and girls. Today we are going to use a smartboard lesson to explain the different cultures and traditions in the Virginia colony. You will know you have it when you can correctly identify each culture's traditions. All right, so let's take a close look at this. Now, boys and girls, I want you to pay close attention to this video because you are going to have to give me some information back on the class kick slide, okay? So you're going to have to write down some facts for this lesson. So, people affect or change the area in which they live. Whenever people settle an area, they change the culture and landscape to reflect their beliefs, customs, and architecture. The cultural landscape of the Virginia colony showed bits of all of these different cultures. So a cultural landscape is what an area looks like based on the cultures that live there. Culture is the belief, customs, and practices of a group that gets passed on from generation to generation. So where do we see bits of culture from the English, Africans, Native Americans, Germans, Scots-Irish in the Virginia colony? Let's see. So examples of architecture that reflect different cultures include barns, homes, and places of worship. And if you look at these different barns here is what an English farmhouse would look like. Up top, you have a German barn. Down bottom, you have a Scots-Irish barn, and over to the right, you have an African barn. You can tell that they are all barns that are used for animals, but they all look different, and that's because of the culture that built them. Let's look at the different churches. So we have the English church up at your top left. To your right, you have the German church. And down at the bottom, you have a Scots-Irish church. Again, they all look different, but they all provide the same service or the same purpose. All right, so the names of many places in Virginia come from different cultures. For example, Richmond is an English name. American Indian is Roanoke. The name Roanoke is an American Indian name. Okay. During the second half of the 1600s, Virginia's population got much bigger. Population in Virginia around 1640 was about 10,000 people, and in the 1700s, it was 50,000 people. So people came from different countries to settle in Virginia. What groups were living in Virginia by the 1620s? Let's see. We had three different groups. We had the English, the Native Americans, and the Africans. Germans and Scots-Irish settlers arrived soon after that. All right, so let's look at this map. So here is the United States. What is the United States today? And if you remember, Native Americans were living all throughout Virginia. All right, so if you came about right here, you would have Virginia. And Native Americans lived all throughout Virginia before the English colonists come. So down at the bottom in the orange, Africans came from there. And then if you look at the top, you have your Germans, Scots-Irish, and then your English. So all of these groups right here, all these four groups, they had to travel all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to get to Virginia. All right, in what parts of Virginia did these five different cultural groups settle? The English and other Europeans settled primarily in the coastal plain tidewater and the Piedmont regions. Germans and Scots-Irish settled primarily in the Shenandoah Valley, which was along the migration route. Africans were settled primarily in the coastal plain, tidewater, and the Piedmont regions where tobacco agriculture required a great deal of labor. And prior to the arrival of the settlers, American Indians lived throughout Virginia. after the settlers arrived, they were forced inland. So they moved further away from the Chesapeake Bay and Atlantic Ocean. That means inland. Migration and living in new areas cause people to adapt old customs to their new environments. All right, boys and girls, I want you to pay close attention to this map. We're going to talk about it here, but then we will create an anchor chart that you will post on the Class Kick page in another video. So if you look here, you have, so this is your legend or your map key. So if you look at the red triangles, that is where your Scots-Irish settled. And you have your Chesapeake Bay and Atlantic Ocean here. The purple, that was your German culture. So they came to Virginia through the Chesapeake Bay, but they traveled across, they traveled inland to finally settle. If you notice, the Indians is represented by an orange line, and it actually circles all of Virginia because Indians live all over Virginia. Africans are represented by the tobacco leaf, and that is in the coastal plain and Piedmont regions. And the English settled in the coastal plain and Piedmont regions as well, and that is represented by a blue star. Okay, so you're going to watch our next video of us creating an anchor chart together. And yes, you are going to have to draw Virginia when I do this with you. So go ahead and get your paper and pencil and get ready to create your anchor chart.